we all envy him. But obviously you can't have many Anand Kumar, you can have only one Anand Kumar. I just give you 2 or 3 points and then I'll come to my point. His biggest contribution, I think, has been his ability to be a teacher. And I think he has been a kind of silent role model for all of us. We can never live up to his ability to be a teacher and his ability to kind of, not be critical. I am considered as the far opposite of Anand Kumar, who is very inaccessible, always kind of, suspecting and doubting students' ability to do good work. He never did that. I remember, and that has had consequences for the way in which profession has developed in India. A long time back, which was I think more than 10 years back perhaps, I used to be, 15 years back perhaps, visitor nominee of the new Central University which had been set up in Odisha. And this Central University came up in the most remote area, Korapur in Odisha. And since I was the visitor nominee, they had the interviews, but interviews were conducted in Bhubaneswar. Vice Chancellor also lived in Bhubaneswar. Nobody would kind of go there. It was hard to reach there. You had to go to Vizag, and from there you had to take a train to be able to reach there. But politicians have their own way of choosing where the university should come up. And we obviously had lots of applications, and there were only 2 candidates whom we could consider. And we were also aware that we should find candidates from the region. People might come from outside and it's a difficult place to live. And the moment they get a better job, they'll run away. They'll come because they're good. And we interviewed like 20-25 people, and there were 2 best candidates. They were both from JNU. They were both from Anand Kumar students. Right? People who were actually otherwise will not get opportunity. They would not even find it easier to find a supervisor. And Anand Kumar would not only sign their papers, but also give them feeling that they are doing great work. And they were actually the best among all the candidates we interviewed, and we selected them. And I think this is something which is not to be taken lightly. And that has been the great contribution. You have a list of candidates he has supervised, and the manner in which students kind of, naturally flow to him, and the kind of bonding that they develop with him. I know people from Punjab and Chandigarh, they arrived here driving cars all the way just to be here and see, and also people from all over the country. I don't know everyone. Just the kind of affection and the kind of love that he gives them. And then he also, in that sense, kind of inculcates critical imagination in them. And I think Ashish is a good example of this. I think this perhaps is the best title to have for a seminar to honor Professor Anand Kumar in 2025. I don't have a written paper like Professor Nagala, or I don't have a well worked out argument like Professor Sujata had. So what I'm going to say is, in the tradition of doing public sociology, what I call as gupshup. So I think this is a very good point that you made. I think it's very important for us to start thinking about it, whether democratic imagination is an end in itself or it is a mean to an end. And I think that's a very, very important point, and I think that is where all the sociology should kind of focus. So in my understanding, again, as I said, it's gupshup, it's not well worked out paper. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I remember Professor Barua came here, and then there were some discussions about public sociology, and as Professor Anand Kumar was saying, he identifies 3 kinds of sociology: classical sociology, which I would also, to which I will add what I call a professional sociology, where you have a conceptual framework, you do empirical work, you come out with a paper. That is professional sociology. All of us do also what one would call as classical sociology of that kind, or professional sociology. Second is obviously sociology for policymakers. So where we consult the state, we consult other kinds of agencies like World Bank or other organizations which are making policy, and there is a sociological component in it. That's a very important part of it. And the third is what is called as public sociology, when we begin to talk to public. The problem with this classification, I think in my understanding, is that it produces a kind of hierarchy. That the serious people, sociologists, proper sociologists would do professional sociology, and there are those who have picked up lessons from here and there and they'll do public sociology. I think doing public sociology is the most difficult thing, and I'm kind of last 5-6 years I've been trying to perhaps do that. I don't know whether it is public sociology or not, but I've been kind of, because we live in the age of social media, I also feel, your academic books are not not read by many people these days. So I published a book on village, which is kind of part of larger kind of communication with the public. I've also been writing in newspapers occasionally, though not very much, but also these new podcasts and interviews, giving interviews to. So this would count as, to me, public sociology. So how does one, in some sense, if one was to do a sociological imagination of this question, how does one go about it? I think if one was to think of a mandate of sociology, what would be the mandate of sociology? And I think the mandate, that's why I was complimenting Ashish, historically speaking, the mandate of sociology is to expand democratic imagination. And the context obviously is the modern nation state about which everyone has spoken, constitutional democracy, etc., etc. And sociologists have historically had that mandate right from day one. That's how sociology came up. Political scientists were talking about the state, but I think sociologists were also contributing to the same modernist dream of having a kind of democratically imagined social, right? And this is, again, if you look at freedom movement critically, which we were talking about, Gandhi, Nehru, Ambedkar, they might appear to be disagreeing with each other, but all of them are actually working for expanding that democratic imagination so that we can have a nation state where citizenship flourishes, where some kind of democratic social could also be produced. That's why Ambedkar was far more impatient than Gandhi was or than Nehru was. So he wanted social to come first, and they were saying let the political come first. I think, but all of them were actually working towards expanding social, the democratic imagination. And Gandhi, when actually he goes to the Indian village, and I've written on this, he had this romantic idea of Indian village, and when he says he goes to the village, he feels very uncomfortable and very disappointed. And that's when he comes up with his own modernist view of Indian village, as I would like to call it, that how could build a democratic community which would also be Indian village, right? And that village is not the ancient village or the classical Indian village. That is a new kind of, democratically, in some sense, structured village there where there is no hierarchy, there is no untouchability, there is no humiliation, and people live together. They also have post offices. So all of them were in some sense working for expanding democratic imagination. And if one was to say that who are we accountable to, right? And if that is the case, we are not accountable to people who fund us. We are not accountable to the state. We are not accountable to even to identify people from CIA, like we're talking about, whenever there is a conflict in South Asia, India is the villain. So we are always thinking of conspiracies, right? And I think this is the audience that we are going to engage with. In public sociology, audience not only is just audience, they also have identities, they also have ideologies, they also have positions, and the value of sociology lies in our ability to speak in a language which makes them uncomfortable, not makes them feel good about themselves. Not that, people should just clap and say Zindabad, Zindabad. So that is not public sociology. That is classical political activism. And I'll just give example of, two cases now, and I'll stop there. One, for example, recently, and something that I engaged with, you had this Supreme Court judgment on subclassification of scheduled castes, or later on extended to scheduled tribes as well as to OBC. OBCs are already subclassified. And second was the announcement by Home Minister to conduct caste census. Now, these are things on which people have opinions, and those opinions are invariably structured by their identities, right? For example, when you're talking about subclassification, in a crowd, even if you're speaking to Dalits, and there are specific caste groups which are historically privileged caste groups, not privileged is the wrong word, historically who have benefited from reservation more than others, they will have very clear positions. Subclassification is a bad thing. You should not have subclassification. There should be one SC category, and that would divide our unity. It would divide the unity. But the point is that there is a point in it, and it is supported by data. I have done empirical work on Punjab. I've shown how reservations are kind of, there are problem, and subclassification is required, and subclassification, and that's based on my sociological research. and my values that come from professional expansion or democratic imagination and citizenship. And the second was a question of caste census. Should there be caste census? Most people who oppose caste census would invariably be also from privileged caste background, historically privileged caste background. And these are very, very important kind of points where we have to bring in our professional strength to be able to show that how caste census is the best way to get rid of caste. You cannot get rid of caste without talking about it, without engaging with it, without creating data, without making things messy. If there is more data on caste, it would disintegrate, it would become fragmented, it would kind of then show that there is no single caste, there are so many differences. We all work with this Varna model of hierarchy, but the moment you go to ground, you realize how complicated this reality is, how much diverse it is, how changing it is. And the moment you bring that to platform, and actually policies and state also begins to ends up reinforcing certain those reified identities where people have moved out. If you talk to Tamil or go to Tamil Nadu, I can't even understand, left caste and right caste. I can't understand that language, right? You have to be in Tamil Nadu context. You have to look at the history of last 50 years in order to engage with the caste realities of Tamil Nadu today. And you'll have to do it with the data which is available in 2025. Every 10 years there should be comprehensive data on all kinds of inequalities, unequal structures, on gender, on caste, on tribe, on OBCs, on other kinds of rural-urban divisions, all the things that we work on. And I think that's what makes sociology exciting. And unless we connect with public, unless we kind of engage with public, we don't really feel motivated. I think that's what also gives us this interesting position where we will continue to be interesting people even if AI comes. AI can be, replacing everything else, but it can't replace sociologists. Thank you so much.